Commission of Inquiry into State Capture, we call it the Zondo Commission. It got off to a slow start today. There was a delay from Anoj Singh, the former Chief Financial Officer of Eskom and of Transnet. The inquiry currently hearing Eskom-related evidence from the former Eskom Chief Financial Officer. These are live pictures happening now. He's explaining contracts and various other questions that are coming his way. But proceedings started late today. Tumaole Mohlaoli has agreed to provide Anoj Singh's explanation for us. He, of course, is our reporter who's following this. Tumaole, good afternoon to you. Did the dog eat Anoj Singh's homework this morning?
Good afternoon, Stephen. Well, as it turns out, Anoj Singh was busy at finalizing, putting the final touches to his affidavit and his documentation he had to present to the Commission of Inquiry. Now, of course, he also got a very strong talking to from Deputy Chief Justice Raymond Zondo, who said that, it certainly does not come across as respectful to the Commission and its work when someone has been requested to submit documentation and to make presentations knowing that he has to answer to certain, questions that the Commission has, only to then be submitting them on the day or the morning that he has to come and lead evidence at the Commission. So it was another slight or another mark against Anoj Singh's name. So certainly not a good start to the day for him.
And Deputy Chief Justice Raymond Zondo does those lectures very well. You don't want to be on the wrong end of one of those.
You certainly don't, Stephen. Yeah, he has this very deadpan expression and his voice goes very deep, and you get a sense that he's trying to put across that the Commission's work is very serious, and he will have to make certain recommendations and findings in terms of how he perceives a witness has participated with the Commission. And those findings and recommendations can be very, very serious and adverse to one's future, if anything is to go by in terms of the final report that everyone is certainly going to be looking forward to after the Commission eventually wraps up its work.
Okay, so Anoj Singh now on the stand taking questions. You can actually see him live in our feed here. It's about the relationship with Trillium. Now, this is quite high finance, quite complicated, but it's also about due process in the way that contracts were signed.
Yes, due process in the way that contracts were signed, and in terms of how third parties were brought in onto contracts and the understanding between Eskom and Anoj Singh and Trillium and of course Regiment's Capital and other players as well in that very complex web of agreements between the companies. However, monies were paid and monies were then paid back to Eskom. To Eskom and Transnet, showing that it wasn't done properly. Due processes were not followed. And this doesn't speak well to Anoj Singh, because he is the man who was supposed to ensure that when the state parastatal went into these contracts, that he would have gone through the contracts and seen that everything that was supposed to have done was indeed done. So we're talking about over R1 billion, billions of rands that were paid off. And this is very, very, very bad, because what he then is trying to do, Stephen, effectively in his testimony, is trying to say that it was not necessarily his fault. And when you look at the deals that were entered into, there was nothing to say that there was anything to stop a third party being enlisted, which he's finding it very difficult to go into, because the Commission is saying that, according to the understanding, it was supposed to be a two-way agreement between, Eskom and another party. So where does a third party come into it? And this is what has been happening in the morning.
It's very complicated, but I mean, I would imagine that when we look at all the evidence we've seen around these contracts, this is the point where essentially Anoj Singh is, being cross-examined. So there's a lot of intricate detail here.
A lot of intricate detail, and part of the detail is on what grounds was a third party enlisted, because it seems as if the contracts were entered into. And what Anoj Singh has effectively been telling the Commission is that this contract was open-ended, which means that the two parties, which would be Eskom, coming into an agreement with another company, Regiment's Capital. It means that Regiment's Capital didn't have the authority to then enlist another player to come in and give consulting services. And this all speaks to, a document about turning around the parastatal, what kind of steps would be taken. And this particular document was central to the vision of trying to rescue, so to speak, Eskom, because it was really in dire straits. We've heard evidence in the various testimonies of how it was losing almost upwards of R1 billion a day because of decisions that have been taken and not acquiring coal and so forth. And this was a key document that was supposed to be what was handed over to the parastatal to try and convince investors to say, this is the new direction we're taking, let us help us keep the lights on. So this is what was at stake, Stephen, and unfortunately, it seems that the understanding of how that document works and who was supposed to be responsible for doing what and what it actually meant is what is being explored now at the Commission.
Tumaole Mohlaoli, thanks very much indeed. Do appreciate it. He's watching the Zondo Commission, not the only legal proceeding underway this afternoon, by the way. We've also got the Judicial Service Commission. They have technical problems with their feed, but they're interviewing 9 candidates for 2 positions on the Constitutional Court. In other words, literally the legal future of the nation in the hands of that commission this afternoon.